Good evening and welcome to the Whiskey Wednesday edition. Joining again, my at least second favorite co-host, the Ninja, Dr. Jason Pittman. And tonight we're going to be talking about why we should help people succeed and why don't we celebrate more people's successes. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Ford, and this is EchelonOrchid.
Guess who's back?
My friend, the Ninja, my at least second favorite, which could be also mean the first, but it's at least the second.
Hey, I'll take it because my last two races, the last 2 weeks, I've come in second. So I guess that's just my destiny at this point. I'm happy with it. I'll take it.
Well, this is one of those things about second place. So let's say you say you're in a race and you pass the person in second place. What place are you in?
First.
No, you just pass the person in second, so you're still in second.
In my mind, it's first. That's probably why I end up second.
Well, cheers, my friend. It's still good to see you, as always.
Good to be seen. Good to see you. Well, I did this race last Sunday morning, which is why I don't do your Sunday morning podcast.
Hold on, I got to get my $100 ready for all those that remember from last week.
You ain't got the balls to light it. And so I do this race, man. I do this race, and it's not easy. And then of course it's the premier classic race. Hey, that's $100 out of it. Fair play. And it's Paris-Roubaix, so it's in the north of France over cobblestones. It's absolutely brutal.
What software are you using for all that?
So the way I do it is I take my regular bike that I ride around on the road that I used to race on when I lived in California, and I hook it onto what's called a direct drive trainer. And so have you ever seen like the little magnetic wheel trainers where it has like a little clamp that goes onto your back wheel and then the wheel rests on a roller?
Right.
Okay. That's like what's called a dummy trainer. I have a direct drive ERG trainer. And so my back wheel comes off, and then the direct drive trainer essentially has a back wheel that the bike goes onto. So I'm driving the trainer directly through my drivetrain. And then there's a microcontroller in it that can dynamically adjust magnets on the flywheel to produce resistance. That's controlled over Bluetooth, or there's an older protocol that's being phased out called ANT+, but I can do either of those onto a computer. And then I use a program called Zwift. Z-W.
Oh, yeah. I've heard you talk about that one.
Yeah. And that's what I do all my training in, and then the races is what I really got into this last year. So I do this race, I come in second, and then I'm working, and while I'm working, I'm watching this real life pro race, Paris-Roubaix. And then I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm fine with second, because it was raining, mud all over dudes, crashes everywhere. People getting their pelvises broken. I don't miss that. I miss riding outside a ton. One of the few things I miss from California, but anyway, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but at least being in North Carolina, you've got a good, 8 months out of the year you can ride outside.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you that. I have way less problems riding here on the road. I think I've said this before. Maybe not. I have less problems riding on the road here in terms of like dealing with traffic than I did in California. One, there's less people, and two, they're kind of conditioned to not pressing slow-moving objects because they're used to tractors and shit like that.
Yeah. I get that. There's something. I used to feel that I would always live in a big city. I liked that big city hustle. But now I like the big city to go visit. I much prefer my space. And I was talking about this. I feel like there are people that are creative that either need, when they get to that creative mode, they either need solitude or they need chaos. I'm at a point now where I desire solitude when I get into that creative moment. And I get it. Like there are some artists, anyone creative, that they and I look at those as both being extremes.
Sure.
I very rarely do I come across someone that's like, yeah, I can be creative in any environment. They tend to gravitate towards the extreme. That's been my experience. Because at one point, like I said, I was on this extreme, which is really interesting to me in that I've gone almost a 180. I'll go to the city to be like, oh, I just want to have some fun. But when I want to be creative and like, no, I don't want to be in the city. I want to be around close friends only, family.
Yeah, I think I've always liked solitude personally, and so I seek that in my environment. But at the same time, I've always been comfortable regardless of where I'm at, because I'll just create the solitude for myself. But I definitely prefer solitude for sure.
Gotta fucking relight this thing.
That's not another $100, by the way. That was a one-time bet.
I'm a man of honor. I would never have assumed that it was only anything but a one. It was like a one-time token. Hey, get a relight. Gotta get another token. I didn't get another token.
Right. I just wanted to clarify. But yeah, man. So I enjoy racing. And of course the big thing for me is the weather. Because although there's a lot of the year, because it's temperate where I'm at, I'm in central North Carolina. So it's pretty tall. There is a lot of rain, dude, and it's unpredictable. And I don't like riding on wet roads. That's dangerous. But the big thing too is I can ride early in the morning or late at night if I choose to. And I don't have to deal with crashes. That was the thing that was really a problem, because I rode with really aggressive fast teams in California. And dude, there's always crashes, always.
Yeah, I can imagine. Jujitsu update for you.
Oh yeah.
So, I learned what's called Marcio's Pass. Okay, so you are in someone's full guard, and so Marcio is like one of like the uncles or something like that. I can't remember the exact aspect, but it was one of the people that started the aspect of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, along with Helio. I think he was like Helio's cousin or something along those lines. I don't remember the whole story, but he is my professor. I mean, Professor Croyler Gracie's. That's the person who gave him his black belt. And so I go, because I get private lessons at the same time. I'm like, look, I've got an ego. Like, I've been doing martial arts for quite a while. I'm not looking to stay this white belt for very long. I can, but I just need to understand certain things. Which is really quite interesting to me, that not many white belts go and get private lessons, and I think they should. It'll help to solidify their confidence. So I did it because I'm like, hey, I've been doing private lessons with martial arts for many years. I mean, you can take that and tweak it. So what I found, because I've never done any grappling, right? Jiu Da has some ground fighting, which basically it's like, how do you get back up to your feet? I never really did it. I'm just thoroughly enjoying this. So, but like I said, I have an ego. And what I've noticed is every time I go to roll with anyone that's got any amount of experience, especially if they're color belt, they immediately are able to grab me and get them in the full guard. And I only know a certain amount of passes, and they are all easily defendable and countered. So I'm like, look, this is what I know. So, Professor Croyler showed me this pass, which is not in the white belt curriculum. And I'm like, okay, well, what's success? And we went through this breakdown. He goes, a a purple belt and above will know they are in trouble immediately as soon as this initial grip happens. They know, oh, shoot, I better move because I'm in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
A blue belt will know when the second leg gets up into this pass. A white belt doesn't realize it until they're next. So how this whole thing happens is that basically, because this is in gi format. So gi, basically what winds up happening is as you wind up maneuvering up, you're able to grab them with whichever hand you're choosing and pull them between your legs, and you have your hand kind of on their legs. They can't do anything. So as they start to struggle, all you do is go to twist because you're trying to break the guard. And the funny thing is you can't keep your legs crossed if your spine's twisting, right? So you just go to put your knee down and immediately everything twists and you get into side control. Or if they block it in a certain way, there's a couple different kind of chokes you can do. All great, all fun. So I got an opportunity to employ this technique this past Monday. Rolled with 3 different people, 3 successful passes, 3 successful Americanas, like immediately. And the even more interesting part is like the first time, because he teaches you also like, okay, here's how to reset. Like don't panic. Like go back, get into it. So I had to reset the first time. So okay, reset, did it again, got to side control, and then was able to sink the Americana. Did it? I'm sorry, it wasn't 3 different people. It was same person in this. Big, strong guy. Like it was the first time for me that I know how to kind of move a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
a little bit. Nothing huge. But so I did it the first time. Second time, I was much quicker. And then as soon as I got the side control, he said, shit, not again. Like he already knew, like done. And then I did it again the third time. Again, about the same speed. He's like, he's strong and like probably 20 years younger than me at the same time. I'm like, man. Now I was definitely winded because I wasn't controlling my breathing. I know that. I shouldn't have been as winded. But I was holding my breath. Going back and reflecting, I'm like, all right, I wasn't focused on my breath. I was focused on 1, 2, 3, 4 as I felt certain things. But man, so much fun.
And grappling is hard because it's so anaerobic. It's very short, high burst energy expenditure. But you're right. There's so much, especially because we're older, that can be compensated for through proper tactic and technique. And so, before these 2 second places, I had 2 first places. Now, the difference is it was a different course because in Zwift, you can race all these different courses. And you pick which one you want, you sign up for it, and show up, and you do it. Fuck it. And it's just tactics, man. It's tactics. Like 2 weeks ago, a guy broke off from the group and was getting a lead out. And it was early in the race, and I didn't think he was going to make it stick. Well, he did. Bye. Like, you just, after a certain point, you can't catch them. But anyway, and so that, especially with somebody that's larger, that's the nice part of grappling is proper technique and tactic to a certain degree can offset size differential.
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't struggling. I just wasn't breathing.
That's hard, dude. I mean, because it's hard. You experienced it in stand-up. When I box or kickbox, it takes a lot of practice. Part of it's relaxing.
Yeah.
Which is hard when you're grappling because you're almost in a constant state of some tension with your muscles, right?
100%.
So it's hard to, and then it's just practice.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like, I worked on this pass in that private lesson, and my legs were shot. Mm-hmm. But I was able to eventually do this. I 75% correctly. I'm sure there's many things can tweak. But of course, what I did was I went back after I did the lesson and I went back to look at other matches that Croyler did, and I found so many times where he was doing this.
Yeah, sure. That's the other part of experience with tactics and technique is you'll start to lay down your own rest points for your flow. And so like it translates into this racing too. Like, so with Zwift race, they're well renowned for like the first 3 to 5 minutes. It's a fucking clown fiesta. It's like full power for 3 to 5 minutes until everybody kind of settles down into their groups. And so you want to get out into one of the first 2 front groups. Otherwise you'll never get to the front of the race. It's different than physical racing in that way. Because it does have physics. So there's drafting inside the game. It's just the way it works is a little different.
I get it. Yeah.
It's the same. Even when I did folk wrestling, you have a style that you develop for yourself and a pace. And so you start to, through practice and repetition, lay down these spots where if a match progresses the way you think it's going to, you have these opportunities of rest so that you can catch your breath.
Yeah, that was one of the really overall like interesting things that I've noticed about myself and the style. We all kind of, so I already kind of know, and maybe my style might be different eventually in jiu-jitsu. I doubt it. It's just not I think it's more about my personality. And so in the striking arts, I was always a counter punch. I want the counter. I want to see what you're going to do so then I can react and do that. And I found that I actually don't mind being in someone's guard. I just don't want to be, bless you, I don't want to be in their full mount. I don't want to be bottom side control. But I don't have a problem, which, in full guard, it's very much, you're still on the defense. But you got to move. And when you move, you create an opening.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's not quite a 50-50. There's still the advantage to the person on the bottom, which is a lot of people get difficulties in that aspect. But I like that. I feel, even though I was, I'll pass Monday, I was getting submitted like constantly. It was, which I'm fine. I'm like, okay, how?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I still felt comfortable in that this is where I want to kind of be, and how can I counter? That was just what I prefer. I prefer that.
Yeah, and you see that people have their little comfortable flows. One of the few things that I think Joe Rogan absolutely was 100% correct about was when he said learning jiu-jitsu is an exercise in learning to be comfortable drowning.
Yeah. So learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Absolutely.
Yep. So you did this past 3 times in this dude. Did you end up showing him how it worked a little bit?
I asked him, and the response was essentially, that's not in our current curriculum.
Okay.
But so this is just one of those things. Again, that's a great pivot point to this aspect. I want to help people to be successful. Now, I offered because he didn't ask.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I feel an obligation to always offer to help. All right. Let me show you. Because there's also a huge, important aspect of that. Teaching someone how to do something makes you better at that particular skill you're trying to teach.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, and that effect is compounded because not only do you get to practice articulating it and manifesting it for somebody else, right? So that creates a different view, almost like a third person view of it, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's also the benefit of that person, if they accept it and they can synthesize it, they're going to get better, which then helps you get better because they're better. And you can kind of ratchet up. And that's one of the beauties of team, even if it's 2 people, right?
Absolutely. And so, I've been teaching the missus how to do it. She's very tiny, and so this is going to be also important. And it's also interesting because you got to develop a style based on your body type as well. Like, she's tiny. Mm-hmm. She's never going to get someone into full guard, because So she's got to have to figure out her open guard strategy when she's, in this position. That's the only thing that's what she's got to focus on. All right, and I think she is. But I mean, I would have loved for him to go like I have done. Okay, how did you do that? I would have loved that, because then I could have worked on those. Because ultimately, I don't know how many years from now, I want to teach people jujitsu, like, for Professor Croyler. I mean, you can't, do it. I enjoy those things, and it's that's what I want to do. So, that's a big thing. Like, I feel like I'm obligated. I feel a true pull, an obligation that's like buried deep inside my psyche, that I must help people be successful in whatever it is they want to do.
Well, yeah, it's interesting you use the word obligation. I agree, and this is where, for me, as a Freemason, I have an oath-based obligation. It's the obligation that we take as Masons is very clear, insofar as, and I'll summarize this. This is not a secret, so I'm not revealing anything that's not already public, but I don't know how many people take the time to read Masonic literature. So this is at the end of every meeting.
If it's not
like
a
tomorrow
YouTube
night.
video, I don't think they're really doing it at this point. I mean, we're a rare breed at this point of reading stuff.
And it's not in the Da Vinci Code or National Treasure. So, so like tomorrow night, I have my. What's that?
Which one's better?
I'll be honest with you, man. I actually prefer National Treasure, but
see,
I actually prefer National Treasure to Indiana Jones also.
That one, yes, but from the I enjoyed the aspect that with the Da Vinci Code, especially that being this unassumed person winds up having to be the hero, and that's what
I like Nick Cage more than Tom Hanks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was more about the book, so I don't care about the actors. I mean, because this is just like, I don't know if you remember, but back at the last bank, when I had this one guy that worked for me, I'm like, yeah, that movie The Rock, and he's like, you mean the movie with Nick Cage? I'm like, no, with Sir Sean Connery. You never mention another actor if Sir Sean Connery is in there first. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, well, and that's a fair statement.
But and that's got one of the best lines out there in that movie, and it truly resonates with me. In that Sean Connery says something to him, and Nick Cage goes, "Well, I'll try my best." Good, you'll try your best. Losers go on about talking about how they did their best. Winners do it and then go home and fuck the prom queen. And then Nick Cage goes, I think her name was Carla or whatever. He said, Carla was the prom queen. Then Sean Connery's like, well, then do it. I'm like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, hopefully everyone tries their best. Sometimes your best is like, don't go, well, I did my best. Because doing your best may not always be good enough. So hopefully you've got someone there that's going to help you raise the level of your best. And
right.
I think too many people are afraid of breaking. And that tells me they've never properly done weight training, right? In terms of like weightlifting. They've never done a true athletic aspect where they're trying to get better and better and better. Because with your your racing, if you didn't burn out, you wouldn't be able to know where your burnout is going to be next. Because if you burned out on that, I don't know. I mean, I have little knowledge overall of the racing that you do, other than the aspect of the occasional watching of the Tour de France when they go to their sprint, right? So you don't know when you get to start that sprint if you don't start it and then burn out and fail. Because now you know the next time you should be able to do that again and fail later, until eventually you know exactly when you need to start that sprint, because you're going to get to that final destination. Too many people are afraid to fail.
They are, and I think that personality also is the type of personality like we were talking about with your jiu-jitsu partner. They're also scared to ask for help or ask for explanation or ask for a hand.
Do you think it's a weakness to ask for help?
No, not at all.
I think it's an absolute strength. I do.
Yeah.
Because it means it's confident that you know what you know and you know what you don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it's a clear-cut sign that you want to become better. And see, and the idea of wanting to be better is an idea that transcends all levels of better, right? And so with the mentality you have, that mentality is the same as if you were a black belt in a number of years. You're still going to have that same mentality. And so the call to service is something that transcends all levels also, because just as much as you want to help your white belt partner now, you also want to help your black belt partner when you're a black belt. And so I think that mentality is kind of tightly coupled. You know, one goes into the other and vice versa.
Well, there's this aspect of trust. Like when I go to I have not had the opportunity to roll with a black belt. With some higher colored belts for sure. But I trust that they are also trying to help me get better so they can eventually get better. Right? The more people they have around them that are at a high functioning level, the better they can be. All right. Which you know, when going back to jiu-jitsu, because you know, I follow it quite a bit and taking a look at everything from the Danaher Death Squad breaking up and now they're being B team and some potential conflict there, which is really interesting because Nicky Ryan, who's Gordon Ryan's brother, has gone with the B team and they're all in Austin. Really kind of interesting. I don't know if it's just a marketing ploy to get other things going, but you know, the interesting thing there is, let's say maybe actually not maybe, in large part, Gordon's success was probably based on the fact that he had a lot of really good training partners.
Yeah.
And now that's been cut in half. Now, he is extremely skilled. So, you know, I mean, I feel like I've watched every match that he's done that's been recorded. I mean, the guy is just like, I never see him panic in any of his matches. And he's won in multiple weight classes. And he was one in the what do you call it? Is it called the ultimate, or it's like basically the unlimited? It's like if you win your division, all people that win their division get to go from into this particular thing to go. All champions get to go against each other.
Yeah, across all the weight classes.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. It may not be called the ultimate.
I think it's ultimate division or something like that. That's close, but not exact.
Yeah. I mean, it's something along those lines. Like, you know, Gordon's won that. Like, it's like he's won in multiple weight classes. When he was at a lower weight class, he didn't win the ultimate. But then when he got to the highest weight class, because he put on like an insane amount of muscle. Insane.
Right.
Like it's anyway. I hope I get the opportunity to roll with more higher belt people that are looking to compete, so I can help them succeed. I want to see some people that I get to train with, like, win some local, regional, national tournaments, whatever I can do to help them get there. Not just that. And I transcend that to every person that works for me, has worked for me, I've been associated with, whatever I can do to help them, I'm more than willing.
Can I have $100?
I mean, no.
Because I'm just going to give it right back to you.
I know. You're not paying me with my own money. Which is such a great line from what's that? It's all about poker. Damn, what the hell is that movie called? It's got Matt. Is it Matt? Yeah, Matt Damon.
Oh, Rounders.
Yeah. Pay this man his money. It's kind of funny because I'm paying you with your own money.
Yeah, is that Rounders? I know which one you're talking about.
It's Rounders. It's Rounders.
That's John Malkovich playing KGB, the Russian. I don't remember what it's called.
I love that.
Yeah,
movie.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I love that movie.
But yeah, man, I think a huge part of being successful is doing what you can to ensure the success of the people around you, to at least equal measure that you give to yourself.
So how do you deal with people that aren't playing the same game as that? Like you've got peers, possibly. I mean, I don't know exactly how it works kind of actively, but you've also been in the commercial. So you've got some peers, right? And everyone is, in a way, it's like a co-opetition. You want to be at least somewhat seen as the best amongst your peers. But what if some of your peers aren't playing the game of trying to also make you better at the same time? It's all about them. How do you think you deal with that?
At least for me, that's what's nice. That's when you really open your mind up to what service is. That's what's beautiful about service, because at a minimum, like we were saying about teaching, right? To me, the act of serving is an act that, by its nature, makes you better. And so, if somebody else is only unidirectionally taking advantage of that, meaning they're not giving it back to you, then okay, that's fine. Because in that service, not only am I making myself better, and I don't even mean that in a moral sense. I mean just the act of whatever it is. I'm going to be better at that act. Well, it's also serving the mission, which is going to benefit more than me. So it still has this multiplicative behavior. Now, it depends to what degree. I mean, sometimes you have to pull somebody aside and say, "Hey, listen, man. This it don't work this way."
I slightly have a different opinion. This is the same opinion that I have when we work for product companies. We both work for product companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hate it that marketing puts in a comparison. Here's how we stack up and talk about that. I don't agree with that at all. This is what my strengths are, and this is why you should be buying this or buying me. So honestly, I do look at it because I've always had peers that aren't necessarily actively trying to make me better. They're looking out for themselves. And so I go, one, just understand it. But two, don't change. Continue, even that person that's not necessary, continue trying to make that person better. Clap when they succeed. Maybe they'll change. If not, don't change you. Don't become bitter. Don't get into that aspect of that person didn't help me, so F them. Don't go that route.
Essentially, I was saying close to the same thing. So here's a great example of it. Because we've both been around long enough to hear people say, maybe we've said it at some point, well, why did so-and-so get a raise or a bonus? I didn't. Oh, they don't deserve that thing, whatever it is. And so at some point I realized years and years and years ago that, well, no, if somebody got something that I covet in some way, maybe I should go ask them how they were able to do that so I understand it and I can do it too. Because there's a living example that's embodied into what I'm saying I want.
Absolutely. Ask.
Yeah.
Look, when you have a contest, there's only one winner.
Right.
And this is also one of my biggest pet peeves with employers today. It's not just today, it's been over the last many years. Why don't you tell that candidate that didn't get the job why they didn't get it?
Yes, amen.
Right? Because how would you know what you need to work on? What was I missing? I mean, if you're not, you should know and be comfortable. Look, you didn't get this because it didn't come across that you were comfortable in blah, 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 or that you were able to demonstrate expertise in blah, blah. Whatever it is, tell them. I see so many things out there and not sometimes they'll get a message that says, sorry, we went in a different direction. That's even rare. Most of the time, they just get ghosted.
I was just going to say that. Well, see, and so that's part of that obligation too. And so, I was going to make this analogy to masonry because at the end of every Blue Lodge, there is what's called the closing charge. And that's an obligation that all of us took an oath to uphold. And you're bound to your brothers through that. And not only to your brothers, but also, and it's very specific, all mankind has a claim upon your good offices. Do good unto all. Now, there's another piece of that then outlines how you act in carrying out that service. And it's interesting you bring this up because it's two parts. The second part of that is the part that spells out that not only are you obligated to help people, but you're obligated to point out where their errors are and help them reform those errors. And that's really what you're talking about. Is it's not just saying, hey, look, this is how I did it. It's also pointing out this is what you did wrong is the way I see it. And here's how I think you can do it differently such that you don't do it wrong again.
I think true leaders do that.
Yeah.
And there are always going to be the pretenders that are out there.
Sure. Sure.
There will be. I think that we know there's an unequal amount of good and evil in the world. The trick is to figure out who you're dealing with and which part of that equation are they, which side of the line are they on, and then act accordingly.
Well, you can even look at it in terms of like labor distribution. Labor distribution follows the fixed 80-20 principle, and it always will and always has. It's just the way the universe brackets things down statistically. We saw this with earning doctorates. How many people around us, neither of us ever did that I remember, said, well, that person did shitty research. It's going to make my doctorate look bad. No, your doctorate looks the way it looks based on what you did.
No, there's plenty of people that said it was shitty research. But I didn't equate that to what mine was. I'm like,
right.
Because actually, when I read some of those ones, I didn't look bad upon the person doing the research. I looked bad upon that chair.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's bad leadership.
Right, exactly. How did you not mentor that person in a way in which this was going to be good? Because look, the concept, I can't think of a concept that got presented that was bad. It was the execution, and I blame the execution aspect on the chair and the committee. Agreed.
What I'm saying is, however bad it may be in actuality, it doesn't reflect on the goodness or badness of mine.
Absolutely true. I don't.
Mine is mine.
Yep.
Yours is yours.
I honestly do not care how many doctors have come after me from where we did our research at. I don't care. Now, I don't go out of my way with Cap Tech anymore because of the current leadership. I don't agree with their direction. So I don't do anything with them. Also, interesting enough, I feel like I've evolved much further than what any person coming to that university is doing, in that I'm no longer just dealing in technology. Like I actually now have a little bit of the itch, a lot of the itch that I want to go back into like doing some adjunct teaching, but not in computer science in any way. That's the great part about this aspect of doing the MBA. Now I have some credibility of transcending into different parts of the universities to help them think differently.
Yeah. Well, and it provides a unique perspective on things. And I think that's another part of service is I gave this webinar today, and I started by talking about a little bit of my background, but I made it very clear up front that I was giving that view not to establish a position of authority, but to contextualize my perception of what it is I'm talking about and to try and help people understand where I'm coming from given my inherent biases because of my background.
Well, which is a point in which many people don't understand about research. Okay, true research, but this is like this whole aspect, even like with COVID, that just irritate, and we've seen this in other aspects, but it's just been much more prominent. A Medium post is not research.
No.
Someone posting something on YouTube is not research. And what is clear, it doesn't matter, based on our training, we can determine, regardless of the discipline, if it was valid research or not. In so many different things I see, I go, no way that would ever pass any institution's IRB.
Yeah. Well, and so to be clear, what I would suggest is that it's not that true research couldn't be on Medium or YouTube. It's just the vast majority of it is not.
Well, I would posit that if you're doing true research, it's not ending up on Medium.
I would tend to agree with you. I just don't think it's impossible just because of the platform.
Well, yeah,
I would agree that platform tends to attract people that use it to promulgate what looks to be research, right? But
well, it might look to be, but I guess that's my point. That yeah, sure, true research could exist on Medium, and if it is, they're going to post the links to where those things happened. Right,
because it's fundamentally a process that you follow.
Right.
I totally agree with you, man.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear for the audience that it's possible. It's not like the platform doesn't support it. It's the people using the platform the way they do that is not scientific.
It's also possible to get a mutation that frogs would actually grow wings so they wouldn't bump their ass when they hop.
Yeah, that is true.
But this is that aspect. I think it's very, very difficult for people in general to understand, because their source of knowledge is mainstream media.
Right.
They don't understand. Like, there's plenty of people that are like Google experts, quote, but if they're true Google experts, they would understand that there's google.com/scholar. And at least if they were quoting things from that aspect, pretty good. There's a much different understanding. But most people don't even know that google.com/scholar exists.
Right. Right. Well, because the idea of like a paper gets confused with, and this is, as I understand your real point, the idea of a paper gets confused with somebody's post on Facebook. Like, because some source posts it must be the same thing.
Which is one of those things that's irritating to me. And especially, there's many people that have many different opinions of COVID. I honestly don't care. Personal risk assessment. Do what you wish. But what's going around on social media right now is this Israeli study, which is a statistical analysis. It is not research. And it's a what do they call it? I don't know exactly how they word it, but basically a pre-posting, because no journal has picked it up, and it hasn't been no authority has blessed it.
Oh, a preprint.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Because I don't know the study you're talking about.
Yeah, well, it's just been going around. Everyone's, I'm going to say everyone. Many people are posting this, going, look at the Israeli study. One, there's a big thing about this. People got to understand, true research eventually ascends upon multiple different population groups. What might be true in one population does not make it true in a different population. And so things become more sound scientifically as it transcends multiple different population groups. So what happened in this Israeli study doesn't mean, because Israel is like the size of, I don't know, Connecticut or something. I mean, it's not big. So it doesn't, when you start going to a group of 300 million people versus, I don't even know what Israel is, a million. I don't know the numbers, but I just go, they don't understand that could very well be nothing more than an outlier.
Yeah, if you're trying to generalize those findings to a global population, because there's substantial genetic differences.
Well, yeah, there is.
And listen, if somebody takes that out of context, go look at what's called Tay-Sachs disease and see what population that affects. I'm not making a racist comment. It's an observation of fact.
Or sickle cell anemia.
Exactly. That's right. And they're groups that are geographically located like that, globally, right, have different genetic variations, which is why things like 23andMe, all the genealogy websites, that's why they work the way they do, because there's different genetic markers. That's just science.
It is. There was something interesting about, I'm going to get back to our topic originally, but I read something, I don't know how many years ago, that sickle cell essentially developed because it was a natural DNA response to defending against malaria.
Yep. Yeah.
It just had, unfortunately, it had negative consequences in a different aspect, but that seems to be the evolutionary response to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Well, and look, most mutations are fatal. It's through slow variation over vast amounts of time, and you get these mutations that produce these effects that, I mean, Tim Ferriss said it best, there's no biological free lunch. Like, everything has a side effect, including vaccines. I got vaccinated, not only for COVID, but for all kinds of stuff, right? Of course it has side effects. I mean, like, whatever, man. Whatever.
Well, and this is one of those things, like, people, I honestly feel like, so one, my personal opinion, not that kind of scientist, but I don't view any of the COVID remedies to be a true vaccination, because it doesn't eradicate. It provides your immune system an enhancement. Because if it was eradicated, it like an MMR or polio or anything, like, you're never getting it done. Like, it's stopped. But I just say to people, well, anyone my first question to people who say they're against it is, do you get a flu shot? Because the flu shot, to me, in principle, is the same thing. Not that the flu and COVID are the same thing, but the method. It doesn't mean you won't get the flu. It's just giving your immune system an opportunity to potentially respond better in the event that you do get that flu that year. And
right.
So anyone that says they're against the COVID shot, but they still get a flu shot, all right, look, you don't, to me, it's equivocal. In terms of that, because neither one of them are a true vaccine. It's flu shot, COVID shot. I don't consider them a vaccine. Maybe in the true biological sense it is, but I don't consider that. But I just still go back to your risk tolerance, whatever that might be. It's a risk-based decision, and I feel, this is where I get to that libertarian aspect. I don't care if you want to do cocaine. I don't care if you want to get the COVID shot. To me, they're the same aspect. You're an adult. Do what you feel is best based on your risk tolerance. I don't want government intervention.
No, I don't want the government to force people to do it. But at the same time, I don't want the government to absolve those people from the consequences of their decisions. And by those people, I mean everybody making a decision about anything.
Right. Well, but that also comes, fair enough, right? But that's also why we have insurance. You transfer that risk to your insurance, and maybe insurance companies will say, if you don't have flu shots, COVID shots, whatever might come next, then your insurance premium is going to be higher. They did this with smokers, so
yeah, right. Well, and mandates for vaccination, classified therapies have precedence in society. I mean, every kid that went to public school has to be vaccinated.
Well,
my dogs have.
They don't necessarily enforce that, but
well, enforcement's a different thing. That's the consequence piece. But the mandate has precedence in culture.
But yeah, I agree. This is a big thing. People are like, this is unconstitutional. No, the Supreme Court ruled on this shit back in like 1920.
If you're a healthcare worker, there's a history of a mandate within those structures that you have to have like Hep vaccinations.
Yeah.
I did when I worked in a tattoo studio. Even though we weren't regulated by OSHA, the county of LA regulated those types of establishments, and you had to have A and B vaccinations.
So, do you? So I don't know as much about those ones. Were they true? Like you would never be able to get Hep A, Hep B, or were they more closer to like COVID and flu?
I have to go back and look, and of course, it's been a long time. My recollection of the hepatitis vaccines, there's 3, and they may be different in terms of their half-life.
Is hepatitis a bacteria or a virus?
Hepatitis
Yeah.
is a virus.
Okay.
At least one of them was permanent immunity.
Okay.
That's my recollection. The other 2, I'm gonna say one maybe, one not, but to be fair, I don't remember. That was a long time.
Interesting. Yeah. So, all right, we'll pivot off of this. Getting back to the second part of the question. In that, why do you think people are not so willing to celebrate other people's success?
I think it's a combination of things. One, some people just don't have that temperament, and I think that population included, but also other people over time can become bitter and resentful. And if you're not happy, you're probably going to make sure that the people around you are at least close to equally as unhappy as you. I mean, misery loves company. And that's a hard ditch to dig yourself out of once you're in it.
So how do you think people could dig themselves out of that ditch?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how much responsibility the individual bears in that instance. It depends on the situation. In an ideal situation, the team should help. Somebody or somebody's on a team or a group, whether that works at different levels up to a certain degree, ought to, we'll go back to like your jujitsu analogy. The guy didn't ask, and he probably should have, so you offered. Now it's his responsibility to accept it or not. I don't think that goes away, but I think we ought to be aware of when people are in a situation that is abnormal, because it's not normal to be miserable. It's not. Most life on the face of the planet avoids misery.
Well, I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay.
I think most people are miserable and they don't know how to get out of that, because they believe that the result and that the pursuit should be happiness, and therefore that always changes. I believe based upon your works, you're going to have times of happiness, and that's what keeps you working. I think most people truly are miserable.
But I would agree that a large percentage of people are leading lives of desperate misery. I would agree with you.
Think about how many people they hate what they do for a job.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's an overwhelming majority, because they haven't figured out, and that's just something that's it's foreign to me, but I can recognize the observation because I can see it in how they act. And I go, you spend the majority of your life working for a paycheck. And if you're miserable, I mean, I don't know what the averages are, but what we definitely know is that the average work week is 40 hours. And let's assume that the average commute is 45 minutes each way. So that's an hour and a half, 5 days a week. What is that? 7 hours?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. Let's just assume it's 7 hours of commute. All right. I'm not going to do the math, but let's assume it's 7
I'm following
hours.
you.
All right. So that's 47 hours a week. and you get home, that means let's say it's 40 hours, not including lunch. So let's say it's 8 to 5. So you get home at 5:45 if you're able to leave. You do whatever with the family. You're doing whatever. You've got maybe an hour to yourself because you got a family at this point. It's only 5 hours a week. And then, okay, what are you doing on the weekends? You're probably doing like different things. So not a whole lot of time to be having an opportunity to do something productive for yourself. And so many people are spending the majority of their waking hours per week being miserable.
Agreed. And so what I was saying was then I think it's the obligation, responsibility at various levels, let's say the group, to do what we can to intervene so that of that majority, whatever the percentage is, that is interested in escaping that misery, at least has an opportunity for a helping hand. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, and this is why I go, and this is really kind of coincidental, but maybe not. And I think we've talked about it, but so end of January, early February 2020, I allowed a bunch of my people to work remotely. And I was scolded for it. I'm like, we're in IT. We all do this stuff. Like you work remote. Like, who cares? But I was scolded. I didn't accept that scolding. But I went back to my people and I said, look, I promise you all, by the end of March, we will be able to work remotely whenever we need to work remotely. Now, the funny part is, and I've joked, sometimes my powers just extend beyond what I intended. I didn't intend for COVID to happen, but by the end of March, we were all working remotely.
Right.
Maybe it was coincidental, or maybe it was because I truly am the emperor of the universe. I don't know. But, it's more and more things are going towards it. Perhaps I am. But I truly believe that the ability to work remotely will give many people the opportunity, and I don't like saying work-life balance because everything eventually balances no matter what, right? I believe it gives more people the opportunity to have a more productive personal life, which will then enable them to be more successful in their professional life. And that circle is now much more robust than what it was prior to COVID. That's my belief. There's going to be positions that can't be remote, and there's going to be positions that why aren't they remote? And I love all these articles talking about Google, Facebook, Apple, whatever, they're bringing people back to the office, and I go, the majority of their workforce is remote now. They don't all go into the office. Like the person who is responsible for Android and Chrome at Google is 100% remote. He lives in only Maryland. So there's no office there. So
right.
Don't put limits on where, if some people need to be around other people all the time. Some people don't need to be around anyone ever. Focus on results.
Well, right. And I think I 100% agree. And so I think the better term than work-life balance, because I've never liked that term either, is opportunity for self-improvement. That's really what people need to be healthy, mentally and physically. However they choose to manifest that, is on them. And there's, I think, suitable help available. But yeah, man, I really do believe that, sincerely, that those of us, there's this idea that those that can help are obligated to help. And that's that call to service. And then that becomes an obligation, and that gets engendered into, not only should you be actively helping those around you, but you should be pointing out where they're wrong and helping them correct it. And then you also have to understand
so how
that
do
that
you
has
feel when someone points out that you're wrong? I mean, in their opinion, you're wrong.
I don't know that I feel anything about it, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just input, you know what I mean? In the same way, I don't know that I really feel anything about when somebody tells me I did something awesome. I don't know that I care.
I
Emotionally, right? I don't
Right.
have like an emotional attachment to it one way or the other on either side of that coin.
So I tend to agree, but here's where I'm going to go one level deeper in this. Is that your opinion, or do you have data? Right?
I would say yeah, and I would say
says it.
at least for me, I have data.
Well, yeah. I mean, we tend to come with data. I mean, that's just our personalities. But this gets into this aspect of, when I talk with a lot of my management team and people like that, there's a time for opinions and there's time for data. Your opinion might be I'm wrong. I don't care about your opinion. I care about the data. And so at a certain point in time, I go, okay, it's no longer opinion time. It's now testing time. Prove it, right? So if someone says you're wrong because of blah, 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 and they don't have data, it's just another hypothesis. And I just go, you're just telling me another null hypothesis. I don't care. Those things don't affect me. Zero. Bottom line is, test it. I care about the test results. And the test results tell me I'm never wrong, because that's going to tell me the way in which I'm going to be, and my teams are going to be right.
See, I think I view it somewhat differently, and it actually goes back to a couple episodes ago when we were talking with Mike about respect and politeness. And when I was expressing that idea, at least for me, I just treat everybody equally. And people kind of sort themselves into temperament categories, and it all just. What's that?
Do you treat them equally? Do you truly treat them equally?
Yeah, I would say so.
So, all right, I'm going to challenge you on this, my friend.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I were to say something to you, does it carry the same, equal, or the same weight, more weight, less weight than some random person or one of your students?
Well, we and I'm not being obtuse here, but I'm being serious. We have to understand what you mean by does it carry the same weight? I process it the same way. It means the same. It doesn't mean something different because it gets source. That's what I meant earlier, which I was explaining.
But I think
when I said it's all input.
Right, but I think you might consider the importance of that. If I were to say to you, look, bro, I think you're fucking up. You might consider that a little bit, regardless if you agree or not. You're going to consider that a little bit more than what you might be if some freshman undergrad tells you you're fucking up. You may go through the same process, but you might think upon it more to determine valid or not valid.
I don't know, man. I don't know that I would rank order it that way, to be honest with you. I don't know that I would.
I think
there's a lot of variables, man.
There's certainly a lot of variables, but I think there's an aspect of trust, right? We've known each other since 2010, and we've gone through some, highs and lows. We've gone through some battles, right? And so that those scars say, like, if you were to say to me, like, honestly, and I believe this, you saying something to me will at least make me think deeper on on what you say, to see where you're coming from. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree, but I'm just going to go, wait a minute, you're the ninja, so I'm going to go, all right, well, what am I missing that he's not? And it doesn't mean, and what is he missing that I'm not? I'm going to think on it deeper.
I think it's probably fair. Maybe this is what you're getting to. You tell me if I'm off base here. If we could agree that the essence of what you're saying is that because of the depth and duration of our relationship, your insights have a higher probability of being accurate than some random person or somebody that doesn't have that same degree of relationship, then that I would agree with.
Yeah,
that I would agree with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if that's what you mean by weight, then
Yeah,
yes,
and
I
that
agree.
is. I mean, there's an aspect of as you build these relationships with people, I think, and I think this is an important part in leadership that many people don't get. It's a nuance they don't get. You need to accept people's counsel. It doesn't mean you need to accept their result, their intended result, right?
Right.
There's been plenty of things that we've talked about over the years. Doesn't mean that we agree, but you go, okay, this is iron sharpens iron, and so okay, got it. But I'm doing this, and I'm going to be careful in these things because I do kind of I trust your opinions. I'm going to be careful in these things, and I don't think many people do that. I think their ego gets in the way.
Yeah, actually, trust is a really good word for it. The more I think about what you're saying, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, it doesn't mean, again, like I trust a lot of the people that work for me. But at a certain point in time, I go, I have different knowledge. Well, I don't know if knowledge or I have different experiences than what they do. So let's figure out if we're going to accept or reject the null hypothesis.
So based on that, I got a final question for you.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me. So, and I'll give you my answer.
No, give me your answer after mine. I don't want to be influenced.
Yeah. Right. So, in this context, would you rank, order, or trust your opinion of yourself highest or lowest? So let's say you take a set of 3 to 5 trusted.
Question.
What's that?
That's a really loaded question.
Oh, fuck yeah, it is, dude. That's great.
All right.
So let's say, I'll paint a scenario. Let's say you take 3 to 5 of your most trusted counselors, and that set of people give you their input based on the same prompt, which then you ask yourself that same prompt. Do you automatically put your assessment at the top or the bottom?
So what I've learned through all of my vast years of experience and confirmed at the greatest, business school, University of Michigan, go blue, the answer is it depends. All right. So if we're talking about networking in terms of like TCP/IP type stuff, if we're talking about cybersecurity, my opinion is higher ranked, because that's my area. That's my true area, and when I'll say cybersecurity in this perspective, risk-based. Because truly, even though my dissertation was talking about mobile, it was really a risk-based experiment. Okay, and so risk-based and networking, I value my opinion much higher than most people because of my experience. Outside of that, I wouldn't necessarily say lower. I would put myself, because I truly feel in many ways I'm a jack of all trades. And so I would put myself maybe not necessarily average, but maybe above average. I might not put myself in the top 10%, but I'm going to put myself in the top third. And so I give people much more leeway outside of those two areas to convince me that I'm wrong. And I always hope I'm wrong, regardless of whichever area. I want to be wrong.
Sure.
And that was much different than when you and I met. I had to always be right. The doctorate chose me, or not chose, the doctorate convinced me about the difference between having to be right versus not being wrong. And I feel like there's a huge difference there.
Yeah. Well, and so the reason that how I came to think of this question in the moment was I was thinking about, well, why did I take your question the way I did to begin with? And so why do I have this perception about treating things equally in its inputs, so forth and so on. And it occurred to me, well, no, it must seem that way to me, because what I do is I put my opinion first and last. And what I'm doing is a calculation as that input comes in to see if there's a delta change. And if there's not, then I must be at least close to correct. And if there's any delta change, then I need to go back and re-examine what it was I was thinking, as I did as we were having that negotiation of what we meant.
Right.
There you go.
Right. Well, I mean, and just go back to when we were both at Cap Tech. You were actually in Maryland, and neither one of us dealt with an ASA at that time. But we were going through a problem, and I'm going, now, dude, there's an issue here in the networking, right? There's an order of operations that is off, because this is the way in which networking works and TC5Q works. And eventually you're like, here's where it was in the ASA, right? Because I just go, you put networking in front of me. It does. I love it when I have like people tell me, especially interns to entry level people, they tell me their favorite class was networking. We're gonna have a discussion. All right. We're gonna find out where it's at. I may not know the ASA, or because I knew Sidewinder. NetScreens. Truly, it's called NetScreen. Juniper bought it, and Sidewinder. Those were, PIX, which was Cisco ASA as a condenser, NetScreen, and Sidewinder. Those were the firewalls that I knew inside and out, and they're all a little bit different. But it doesn't matter. Packets are packets. TCP/IP works the way in which it does. You show me a packet capture today. It does not matter. Even still today, I can tell you a packet capture where a problem is. Bar none. Doesn't matter. Put myself up against anyone in the world. I'm confident in that. Other things, not so much. And I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with what I just want it to be right. But I go back to that. Like, look, you're doing all these things. I'm like, no, dude, I think the problem is here. I didn't know how to solve it, but I just knew where the problem was. And eventually you're like, and then bam, you figured it out. But it was right. The problem area is right. I just didn't know how to solve it because I didn't know the ASAs.
Right.
And funny enough, that's when Matt was there right there, and he was like observing all of our conversation. And then I kind of go back. It was almost like one of the I don't remember what movie it was or show it was. I kind of looked over. I was like, actually, no, it was a Tombstone reference. And I looked back to him as a Doc Holliday and went, "Oh, you're still here?"
That's what I remember. Yeah, that part I remember for sure. We're back in that little side room.
Yeah, and I just go with don't be afraid to be wrong. Celebrate being wrong. Celebrate someone else's success. It's important. Your turn will come if you put in the work.
Yeah.
Eventually, Kobe Bryant became the best player in the NBA. It was his turn. I mean, and I will go like all these people that talk about is LeBron better than Michael? Fuck no. The real debate was Kobe versus Michael. I don't consider LeBron James. In my view of the NBA, I would not pick LeBron in my top 10.
Those comparisons never make sense to me, man, because it's apples and potatoes. Like those two people didn't compete against one another, so how do you compare them?
Well, they did, but they were different eras, right? So
that's what I mean, though. That's like comparing Bruce Lee to Muhammad Ali.
Actually, Bruce Lee said Muhammad Ali would kill him.
But you understand the point of my reference is that because they didn't compete in the same sport at the same time against one another, there is no basis for the comparison, right. Because the competition is the comparison.
Right. To me, the better analogy would have been Muhammad Ali versus Mike Tyson in their primes.
Right.
Because Muhammad Ali had like Bruce Lee by like 100 pounds.
And fair enough. Fair enough, but people for long periods of time have been making those kinds of lists, ranking across all kinds of different competitions. But it's never, is Conor McGregor better than Khabib? Well, we know the answer to that question. At least in one instance, one iteration of competition, we have the answer to that question. That's a fair comparison. You can't compare GSP to either of them because they never competed.
Well, we can assume, so GSP versus Khabib, I think it's a different scenario because GSP outweighs Khabib by a lot. They didn't compete in the same weight class. So to me, I would have loved to see a comparison of like BJ Penn and Khabib at the same time. That would have been amazing.
Right, but they would have. You would agree, right? All bullshit aside, that they would have to compete to actually make
100%, 100%,
or at least fight a significant amount of the same people, so you can compare performances.
Yeah, sure, 100%. Yeah, I agree with that. And this is just where we'll go back to this aspect. I don't think Khabib is as good as what many people say. He didn't beat very many good people.
Well, and so this actually talks about, this actually ties in when we're talking about research that's not really research. Part of the fatal flaw in these arguments that people have on the internet about shit like this is that they extrapolate past reasonable boundaries.
Yeah.
And so you can reach conclusions based on the observation of what's happened. Anytime you go beyond that, you're outside the bounds of what's reasonable. And I'll agree with you. If you look at his record, it's impressive. When you look at the people that he beat to get that record, it's probably not as impressive as other records, even if you're not comparing those two athletes.
100%. And this is a big thing for me. Like when I'm looking at those things, I go, Khabib was pretty dominant in his weight class. I mean, and look, his weight class, which was what, 155?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love his statement of, hey, I don't care who you put against me. King Kong, if King Kong can make 155, I'll fight him. Khabib never competed higher or lower than. And to me, greatness in combat sports is that could you do this in multiple weight classes? And it's also why I don't feel like John Jones is top 5 for me in that. Maybe higher if he does well in heavyweight. But Conor has fought in multiple weight classes and done well. He's won 2 weight classes. George St. Pierre has won multiple weight classes. I feel like that provides me a context of you're a better mixed martial artist if you can compete and be successful in multiple weight classes, which is why I hold Cowboy in a very high esteem. That's why I hold the Diaz brothers in very high esteem. They've done well. They may not have won championships, but that's why I actually, and to me, if you were to ask who is the best mixed martial artist of all time, Anderson Silva is probably my number 1 guy. Pick a weight class. Look what he's doing in boxing right now. I mean, this dude is almost 50 years old, and Chavez Jr. He fucking clowned him.
Yeah.
I mean, I just go like Anderson. I just remember how he fucking torched Rich Franklin, and Rich Franklin was like top guy. He fucking made him look like he made him look like he was a white belt.
That was the first time I distinctly remember watching somebody walk out and seeing the look on their face and realizing that they already convinced themselves that they weren't going to win.
Well, to me, from Anderson Silva, that happened with Chris Leben.
Well, and that's what started this real mystery and aura around Anderson. And I remember watching, because Rich Franklin was one of my favorite fighters at the time. And I remember seeing that look in his face when he walked out. And I'm like, oh, dude, this ain't good, man.
Well,
And that's when I figured out when you see somebody's face like that, they've already convinced themselves they're not going to win. So
as soon as Rich Franklin got into that Muay Thai guard,
It was
when
good.
Anderson put him in that, he couldn't
Yeah.
defend. It was done.
Yeah.
And Rich Franklin, I mean, look, he made Frank Shamrock look the same way that Anderson Silva made him look. That's the evolution of the sport. There wasn't many years between those two things.
No, not at all. It was a very short time period, but that's also why it's important to compete and make yourself and those around you better so that the whole thing rises up. And
100%.
it's probably a big reason why we have MMA like we do now.
Yeah, 100%. So what do you think is going to compete with the UFC next?
I don't know, man. You know, that's a juggernaut.
I think legislation does. I think there's going to be laws that are passed in some way, some capacity, that makes MMA similar to boxing, to where you are no longer able to hold someone to your promotion like they did in boxing.
Well, you know, right now, the two biggest pressures on the UFC in particular are their weight classes because of the weight cuts and the amount of people failing and having serious problems, and the pay. And I think if the UFC is going to continue to grow as it has, it's going, as an organization, have to figure out how to deal with those two things in particular.
I don't think the pay is truly an issue.
I don't know that the pay is an issue. The perception of the pay seems to be a growing issue. And I don't think it's ever going to go away until it gets dealt with. That's the harder of the two. The weight class thing is actually easy to deal with. You just add more weight classes. Boxing did that.
Right. Well, and the reason why I don't think the pay is the issue is that eventually they're all going to unionize, which I'm 100% against unions. I do not agree with unions in any capacity. But, hey, the laws are what they are. I just don't agree with it. So, with that, eventually fighters will unionize, and that's what's going to force it. And it'll be, I feel like, very much like an NFL-like structure where it'll be a 54% owner, 48% player structure.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's fair or not. I feel like once it's a mature and established aspect, probably, not in the beginning. I mean, in reality, mixed martial arts has only come to prominence in the last decade.
Yeah.
How long did it take Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, soccer to get to its point to where they understand revenue?
Right.
100 years. I don't think yet the MMA community has enough to warrant a close to a 50-50 split. No. I just don't.
And I agree with you, and I'm not suggesting that anything ought to be done. I just see those, from my point of view, being the two big selective pressures that will force some kind of change. I'm not suggesting that change is good. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think if you've got someone, let's say, with a lot of money, that it all comes back down to greed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You got someone with a lot of money that is willing to accept a 20% return on their investment. Boom, done. All right, that promotion will be amazing hit. 20% return is a really fucking good return. Most people, when they look at their returns, if they can get 12%, it's great. Many accept 8%. So a 20% return, that means if you invested $1 million, you're getting $200,000 every year.
Mm-hmm.
pretty damn fucking good return. I wouldn't be mad about that.
No. That's why I'm not upset with my Bitcoin portfolio. But on the other hand, I'm down like 20% on BlackBerry, which I'm upset about.
You're down on what? BlackBerry?
Yeah, man, dude, it's under $10 still.
Yeah. Well, here's a funny thing. I bought BlackBerry at like $1.58 or whatever it was. Sold their shit at like 11.
Yeah.
This was all in the last like 18 months. I know I exited that shit a long time ago. I exited too early. And you'll remember back my show when I said, look, I'm telling you, BJ Restaurants. I exited way too early. I exited that shit at 40, and I bought that shit at like 9. Only because we went there, and I'm like, this place is packed all the time. I don't know what they're trading at right now. I bet you it's pretty damn close to $60. This is why I'm pissed. I
know it's higher than BlackBerry.
What's that?
I said I know it's higher than BlackBerry.
It's a hell of a lot higher than BlackBerry. Let's see.
They are at 4207.
So they were at 60 at one point, or close to that.
Yeah, it looks like in May they were over 60.
Yeah, I was so pissed. I'm like, I left so much money on the table. But hey, BJ's Restaurants helped fund my distillery.
That's the game of it, though, man. It's over the long haul.
I'm enjoying my $100 right now.
I hope it tastes good.
It does. Oh man, so getting back to this aspect, because we're a little bit over time, and I know you probably past your bedtime. I just want to get back to like one. Why do you think we're so against as humans? We don't want to celebrate other people's success.
There's certainly a cultural aspect to it. I mean, not all cultures are like this. Not all groups within a culture are like this. But we can talk about.
I would love to ask Jordan Peterson this question. If I could ever ask him a question, because I mean, you also enjoy his perspective, and the guy from a clinical psychology perspective, who's better? He's got a lot of work that he's done, and that piece of why do people? I would love to ask him that question, because neither one of us are psychologists.
No. I would guess part of it has to do with resource competition. I think part of the answer he would probably give has to do with hierarchies and resources. I think part of it is cultural temperament. Particularly in the U.S., we don't necessarily post World War II really post Vietnam, have a culture that is premised on helping each other. I think pre-Vietnam, certainly pre-World War II, that is different. I also think the world's quite a bit different. I mean, it might be a manifested effect that's a consequence of a globalized society. This is one of the things I talked to Ben about is, why I encouraged him to not stay in California, even though he has, isn't out of selfish reasons, although I do enjoy his company. It's why do you want to stay in LA and compete against 100 million people when you can come here and compete against 1 million? Your odds are much better here. And so when you're faced with that level of competition, and you don't have the temperament to deal with it, that's pretty miserable.
Well, that's where I think sports really help you with that.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
And Ben was, from what I recall, pretty good in basketball in high school.
Oh yeah.
Right. So when you have that aspect of how you're doing and the division level that you're doing, and you're upper echelon there, and you can keep going up and up and up. Mixed martial arts does this, baseball does this. The only one that doesn't really truly do this, because basketball does do this, is football.
Right.
Football doesn't really have that minor league-like system.
Right.
And I mean, I think it's unfortunate, but when you look at that from a business perspective, this is why I tell people, if you get an opportunity, go work for a startup. Because you're going to find out a lot about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And go work for a big company.
Yep.
Because you're going to find out a lot about yourself. Some people do well at big companies. Some people do well at startups. I feel, for me, I never want to work for a Fortune 500 company. Unless I'm the CEO, just because, well, my ego. I honestly feel like I could be the CEO of any Fortune 500 company, no problem. Not an issue. I don't know that I would enjoy it. I just know that I could do it. And I could be better at almost any CEO at a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
I truly feel
I
that.
would agree.
But I don't feel that's my sweet spot. I want people, I want to work, and this is why I'm still at the place where I'm at. I want to work for companies that don't realize their potential.
Yeah.
And it gets back into that helping aspect. I love it when someone succeeds. And I want to promote their success. Even if it was, in a way, a detriment to me. If you and I were competing in something and you beat me, I want to be like, that's the fucking ninja. He did it. You know what? I did everything I could. He won. I want to promote that aspect. It doesn't mean the next time we compete, I don't want to destroy you. But hey, and it's a big reason why I do enjoy Conor McGregor even still to this day. When he loses, he is, I feel, very humble in defeat, and he goes, but I want to fight you again. And I like that. I like that about, I don't like some of the stuff he does personally. I don't want to go, who's advising you? Like, you're doing some stupid shit in your personal life. But competition-wise, I think he is the epitome of competitor. You know what? I lost. You know what? This person did this. I didn't. And I want to fight him again because I know I can beat him. I love that aspect. I don't know that I feel like many people, when they get defeated, it crushes them.
Yeah. Well, I think this just comes to temperament. And that's why, roughly speaking, 2 out of 10 are the ones that are going to do the bulk of the lifting. And 8 out of 10 are going to do about 20% of it.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back into the whole aspect of the square root of any organization does 50% of the work, and the rest of the organization does the other 50%. It's true. No matter how you do it, look at it. I have yet to find that to be false. I've worked for many organizations.
It's a universal principle.
And I love how people go, well, that's just a theory. Yeah, I mean, it may be a theory, but you know what? It's pretty freaking accurate.
I mean, gravity's a theory.
Yeah, but so is critical race theory. I'm not.
Yeah, sure.
I think I've talked about it many times. I've read the aspects of critical race theory. I just go, this is garbage research. I think that's why it's a theory. It's never passed any true academics or professionalized journals, because how can you say that you reject science and you say, well, we're going to go through the scientific process? You can't.
It's called mental gymnastics, which is not a competition I wish to engage in. I have plenty to do. I don't need to occupy myself with nonsense.
And so, speaking of plenty to do, where are you at in your next book?
Oh man, we have been shopping the proposal out to mainstream publishers, and we got, let's say, I think we've sent it to about a dozen. And you were talking about before about responses, so most just ghost you. We've gotten 2 or 3 rejects, but we got one, oh, this is a good idea, we like it. Send us some more, let's say, sample material. They want to do a deeper evaluation of it.
So why do you want to go with the mainstream instead of just self-publishing again? Especially if it's self-published through Amazon, right? The last one.
Yeah, that's correct. If I were doing it by myself, I probably would just self-publish it.
Oh, is this what you're doing with some of your colleagues?
Yeah, this is with my friend that's a philosopher. And he's done both mainstream book publishing and self-publishing. And we decided that for this work, we would try first to go through a mainstream publishing house. It was a long discussion. It makes sense, a fallback position. And in fact, just this week, just the other day, we had a phone conversation where we said, okay, we've gotten a couple of rejects now. The rest are ghosting us. Let's switch to plan B and start gearing up to self-publish this. And then if somebody comes through up to this point, we'll consider it. If it's past that point, it's too late. We're self-publishing. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. If I had it my way, and he agrees with me, it'd be nice to have it out before Christmas for no reason other than the Matrix 4.
The book itself is done.
No, this one's not.
So on whose accountability is it not done by?
Both of them equally.
All right.
Because we agreed up front that we were going to develop it to a certain point. Because the risk is when you deal with an external publisher that they're going to come in and want to change it.
Yeah. Well, you know.
And so we wanted the idea is done, the layout, I should say the outline is fixed, and so we know what we're doing. There's just no point in generating content that might get pushed aside because of a publisher, really an editor's decision. And you can't control that. You can control your reaction to it, but then you get into this weird spot. Anyway.
I have been, for myself, mainly because, so in aspect, I don't know, maybe a year ago, I talked about, like, I've got this book concept, and I've been writing a lot of, I don't know if it's chapters is the right word, but a lot of my epiphanies is to what my leadership style is, and just wanted to tell the world, because I think there's many people that could benefit from those aspects. And even if they don't, the mere aspect, because this is one of my core concepts. And I've really truly found that people that don't live by this are going to have a very difficult time working for me or with me. And that is, if you are unable to accept this aspect of being better tomorrow than you were yesterday, we're going to have a problem. And that's the whole context around the book that I'm hopefully going to publish at some point.
Well, you know, the beauty of writing books is that all you have to do is write a word a day and you'll eventually get there.
Yeah,
right.
And I've written a lot of chapters or pieces of it. I find a concept and I just write as much as I feel like writing on that, and then I just title it. Maybe I come back to it, maybe I don't. I don't know. Whatever. But anyway, my friend, I kept you much longer than what I normally like to keep you. And I know you have to get your beauty rest, because
I do.
Eventually, you'll get as pretty as me, but. As always, my friend, I appreciate your time, your insights, and your conversation. And I wish we were able to do this more often, and we just televise the future better selves that we will become.
Yeah. All right. Man, it's always fun for me. I always look forward to Wednesdays speaking with you. Goes without saying that it's an honor and a pleasure.
My friend, thank you. Give my my best to the family. Hopefully we can all get together in person at some point sooner than later. And have a great rest of your week, my friend.
You too, man. And the same to you. Cheers, bro.
Take care.
Bye-bye.